you notice that on page like 114 and 115, it has more theorems and postulates. You don't necessarily need to write these down because it's just the converse, which remember means you just flip it around, right? So it's just stating it in the other direction. So basically these are saying that if two lines that are cut by a transversal have corresponding angles that are congruent, then the lines are parallel. It's the same thing, just the opposite way. So you don't really need to write them down again. You just need to know that it goes both ways. So like if you know the lines are parallel, then you can say that all of those angles are congruent. And if you're given that those angles are congruent, then you could also say that the lines are parallel. So it goes both ways, which is basically what we're doing in this section, is we're kind of going the other way. And then the other thing, the one that you might want to write down is on page 116. It's the transverse property of parallel lines. That just says if two lines are parallel to the same line, then they have to be parallel to each other. Yeah. Huh? Bless you. Yeah, I would write the yes. So it's on page 116, so I would write that on your sheet. And I'll even go ahead and write it up on the board if you guys want. So it's a transitive property of parallel lines.
So both of those go on?
It's the only one.
Oh, okay.
And so it says that if two lines are parallel to the same line, then they are parallel to each other. All right, so does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Do we understand that? Like, so they would all be parallel if they're both parallel to the same thing. Okay, so then I want to look at example 3 that is on page 116. Right, it has a picture that looks kind of like this. Yes. Yes. It's also in the book on page 116. It's the only green box that's there. That's okay. So this is line, no.
You want us to write this down on notes?
Yeah. I'm just drawing the picture. That way it's there. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 3. So this is line A, and this is line B. And we also have line C and line D. Right, so we have 4 lines.
Why is the numbers like that?
Because that's how they drew them.
Why is there more?
I mean, yes, but we're only worried about these right now. You could technically label all 16 angles if you wanted to, but we don't need to in this one. All right, so then it says which lines can be proved to be parallel from each given statement and state the postulate or theorem that justifies your answer. So if, like, for part A, it says we know that if angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So we have angle 1 here. I'm just going to kind of like highlight. So angle 1 is here, angle 2 is here. So what kind of angles are those?
Alternate interior?
Yeah, so if you're just looking at this part of the picture, right, we're ignoring line D for right now. So that means that which lines would be our parallel lines? A and B, right? So A and B would be the parallel lines, and then C would be the transversal. Right, so that means that, so we would say that A and B are parallel. So we could say A is parallel to B. All right, so we have A is parallel to B, and we said they are alternate interior. All right, and then for part B, you have angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. So then we're going to ignore what we know about angle 1 at this point. All right, so now we're looking at 2 and 3. So now we're kind of just looking at this bottom part, not the top part. So just looking down here, what do we know about angles 2 and 3? Yeah, alternate exterior. Right, because they are, if B is the transversal and C and D are the parallel lines, you've got 2 on the outside, on the top really, and 3 on the outside on the other side. Right, so that means that line C would be parallel to line D, and they are alternate exterior.
Are we proving this, or are these just like?
These are just kind of examples. We're going to do a proof example in a minute.
We are going to prove this? These
Yeah.
are givens?
In a little bit, yeah. And then, so for C, it says angles 5 and 6 add up to 180. So angles 5 and 6 are here. So what kind of angles are 5 and 6? All right, but why?
Interior.
Huh? Consecutive interior, right? So then which 2 lines, like, are they between? So which 2 would be our parallel ones? A and B. Oh, that's a terrible arrow. So A is parallel to B because those are consecutive interior angles. So does that kind of make sense? You have to look at the angles and look at what you're given and then figure out what they are to prove that the lines are parallel.
Like, so, if we were proving that, would we be given this, or would we just figure it
You
out?
could be given, you would be given either one. But you'll have a picture to go by.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to do an example of that here in just a second. We're going to actually do a proof. Yes?
And then would you, on these type of things, can you still do definition of given and stuff to figure out more information about it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So again, looking at angles 1 and 8, what kind of angles are those?
Consecutive exterior.
Not consecutive, because we've got 1 here and 8 here.
Oh, yeah, alternate because on different sides.
Right, so they are alternate interior angles. So that means, oh, sorry, I forgot to label the lines. So the top one is line A, the bottom one is line B. So, since we know that those are alternate interior angles and we know that they're congruent. Huh? Yes, that's what I meant. Sorry. Alternate exterior angles. Third time's a charm today. So, since they are alternate exterior angles, what can we say about the lines that we have?
They are congruent.
No, lines aren't congruent. No, lines.
Lines are
Parallel. Right, so now we can say that line A is parallel to line B. And we can say that, why?
definition of
No. What kind of angles? It's the alternate exterior angle theorem.
Oh, so then that's just,
Yeah. So you can even just write alternate exterior angles. Like, I'm good with that. Right? So again, since we know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 8, and since angle 1 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles, since those angles are congruent, that's enough to say that our lines are parallel. And now that we know those are parallel lines, we can find, like, we can say stuff about all the other angles. So, like, now that those lines are parallel, so we can say, like, our alternate interior angles are congruent, our corresponding angles are congruent.
do you do congruent first or do you change them to equal?
You don't need to change these to equal because we're only worried about them while they're congruent.
Oh, so you
So the only time you would need to switch it is if you have to do some with the supplementary and you would need to talk about their measures being equal to 180. But these, they just stay congruent. So now we're trying to prove that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. So what kind of angles are 2 and 4? No.
Is it alternate something?
No.
I can't remember what it's called. I don't know. Consecutive interior transverse.
Corresponding. Right? Because look, they are both on the left of the transversal and they're both below the parallel lines. So we can say now that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4 because they are corresponding angles.
Is it, would you be using angle postulate?
Yeah.
Can you just say postulate?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. You can write like postulate and theorem if you want. But really, as long as you have the angle type there, we're good. And that's it. We did a proof.
Oh, that was the answer?
Yeah.
That was confusing.
I told you guys these weren't nearly as bad. So basically, you just need to be able to, you either need to be given that the lines are parallel or that's one of the first things you need to try and prove is that these lines are parallel. Because once they're parallel, then everything that we talked about like alternate interior angles are congruent, right? All of that stuff only applies when the lines are parallel. So like if you're not given that the lines are parallel, that's one of the first things you need to try and prove. Right? So that is, I believe, pretty much it. I only gave you one proof to do on your own. Oh, this was yesterday. All right, so on page 117, I want you to do 8 through 16 and then number 23. 117, you're going to do 8 through 16 and number 23. And that's it.